So Michael's going to talk to us today a little bit about how to improve your effectiveness when meeting with people, how to get people to say yes. I mean, Jim told us about all these ideas, think big. And I know some of you are thinking, like, I can't do that. I can't talk to people. I can get people to say yes to my fundraising ideas. I can't get people to, go along with me. But yeah, so Michael's going to show you how to do that. So you can look forward to now you got both parts. Think big. Here's how I do it. How should you do it at a personal level so you can be very effective. So Michael Caruso, come on up.
Thank you, Jim. Nice to see everybody. How was lunch? Good?
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be with you, and I have a great program planned for you today. I want you to put your thinking cap on about reframing something that most of you have done, all of you have done, your entire lives, and it's the art of the first impression. I don't know how we lost the art of it, but one could argue, we're losing the art of a lot of things these days. Everything's moving at hyper speed, and we're not as focused anymore on the basics. Things like eye contact, vocabulary, showing interest in others rather than being solely interested in ourselves. Anybody ever heard of the selfie? Right? And so, in the old days, we have some interactors here. In the old days, we used to take pictures of other people. And this is weird. We never took pictures of our food. I know, right? So we're going to take it apart today, the first impression. I'm going to show you some tricks that will make you much more effective in the relationship game. And the reason you want to do this, the reason you want to sharpen these skills, especially post-COVID now, coming out of the pandemic, we're all a little bit rusty. Yeah, hands up if you're a little bit rusty from living like a Unabomber for 2 years. Is that when you can get relationships to cook faster, good things happen. I mean, just think about regular friendships when you meet somebody. And you ever meet somebody that almost seem like they're reluctant to be your friend, reluctant to shake hands, reluctant to say hello or introduce themselves. Where does this come from? And think about putting Rotary clothes on the same situation. If you could speed up the relationship, you could get people to visit Rotary that much sooner. You could get people to visit the third time much more sooner. And what happens after the third time? They could join that much sooner. What if you're looking for funding or benefactors? And it would take 7 to 8 maybe calls. I do a lot of sales coaching because I teach presentation skills. Imagine, anybody do sales, by the way? Hands up if sales of any kind, yeah? So imagine if you could get the flywheel to spin faster on that, then instead of having to do 7 or 8 sales calls to close a customer, that's the life cycle or the sales cycle, you could close them in only 2 visits. Or how about only 1 visit? And all of it comes from these little personal skills that we're about to review today. I want to open with a quick story that'll make you laugh and get you thinking about how it's like a demo, a narrative demo of how to do this. I was on an airplane one time, and I like to sit in the aisle seat, and I knew that the plane was full because I talked to the gate agent, so I know there's going to be 2 people sitting next to me, but I don't know who they are. So I'm playing the game that you often play on airplanes. I wonder who's sitting next to me today. And a beautiful woman gets on the plane, and she starts walking down the aisle toward me, and I'm wondering, maybe she's going to be my seatmate. And she keeps walking, and she keeps walking, and she goes by, and it's not her. And then a big guy gets on the plane, supersized guy, and I thought maybe he's my seatmate. And he walks, and he walks, and he lumbers down the aisle, and he passes me up. It's not him either. And then I hear my seatmate before I see him. And the reason I hear him is because he's on the cell phone. What is it about cell phones that we talk louder on cell phones than we do in real life? So as he's standing in front of the aisle, and he's on the phone, so he doesn't say anything like, "Excuse me," or "I'm sitting next to you, would you mind getting up?" He doesn't, none of that. He grunts. He goes like this. And the funny thing is, I know exactly what he wants. He wants me to get up so that he can sit down, right? So I get up to clear the aisle, and he's talking on the phone, and he's saying goodbye to a child. Let's assume that it's his child, and he's a daddy. So you just learn stuff. I didn't used to be annoyed when people talk so loud on cell phones, but you can learn a lot of personal information just by paying attention. So I know he's got one child, he's saying goodbye to the child. So I stand up and he puts a bag in the overhead. He's got another one that's going to go down below. And there's a luggage tag on both bags, and I recognize the logo. It's a Michigan company. And so I figured he must work at that company. So now I know where he works, and he's saying goodbye to a second child. He takes his seat, and now I hear there's an aggravation. He's a little nervous now. He's trying to contain something, and then I hear a person yelling at him in the phone. And it turns out it's a third child that he's saying goodbye to. The third one's crying and wailing that Daddy's leaving home. I felt bad for the guy. I don't have any kids, but I felt bad for him. And then I felt even worse because the flight attendant said, we're going to be closing the boarding doors, and that means you have to. So he has to hang up on his son, who is wailing that Daddy is leaving town. And he does. And he hangs up, and he goes like this, a biggest sigh. Like the weight of the world is leaving his shoulders, you know. And I turned to him, and I said, Daddy's leaving home, huh? And he said, oh, you were listening. I said, how could I not? And he said, yeah, my kids do not like it when I leave home. And I said, well, give me the basics. How many kids are we talking about here? He says 3. I said, how old are they? He said 4, 5, and 7. I said, boys, girls? He says, 2 girls and a boy. Sandy, Sally, and Scotty. Scotty's the oldest. He was the one that was crying the loudest just now. And I said, oh man, I feel you. And you work at this company, that bag on your luggage? He said, well, you don't miss anything, do you? I said, well, you know, I'm just paying attention. Is that where you work? He said, yeah. I said, what do you do for them? Or, you know, if you don't mind me asking. He says, well, I'm a sales manager. And I said, how often do you travel? You're traveling for work, I assume. He said, yeah, I'm gone maybe 15 to 18 days a month. That's what I said. And I said, 15 to 18 days a month? Why do you have to travel so much? He said, well, I have to go make sure my people are working a full day. And I said, okay, well, all right. And then he got this like strange expression on his face, you know, like he's affronted almost, you know, and I'm just waiting to see what's on his mind. And he goes, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Which I thought was an interesting expression. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. You see, he's troubled right now because I now have a ton of personal information about this guy, and he knows nothing about me, right? He's just like giving it up to a complete stranger. Think about this. I know the names and ages of his 3 children. I know what he does for a living. I know where he works. I know his biggest problem at work. And he knows nothing about me. It's time to play catch up. So he says, I didn't get your name. I held out my hand first because I know the person who reaches out first has influence in any relationship. Did you know this? Yeah. So I held out my hand and I said, my name is Michael Angelo Caruso. Now my name by itself is an elevator speech. He shakes my hand and goes, Michael Angelo Caruso. He says, that's a fantastic name. He says, what do you do for a living? I said, well, I teach sales managers how to get their people to work a full day. He says, can I have a card? The lady in front of us says, I want one too. You see all the cool stuff that happened in that little story? And it's a true story, by the way. And I do this all the time because I practice this stuff. And that's how I got to be good at it. Some of you are really good at it, and it's because you practice it. When you practice the fundamentals about relationship building, then good things happen for you. So I became particularly interested in the first 15 seconds of First Impressions when I was invited to go on a ride-along with an old high school chum of mine who was working for the Sheboygan Police Department up in Michigan. Now, have any of you done a ride-along in a police car in the front seat? Okay. It's fun, isn't it? It's a unique experience to go in a police car like that, voluntarily. And it was interesting to me because we did a bunch of stuff that day, but we did traffic stops, speeding stops, right? And I would ask him questions, you know, and I would ask him, what do you think of this? Because he stops and a bunch of stuff happens in the process, and you get to learn about the process when you're in the front seat. And so I ask him questions, and I'm going to fill you in on the highlights of what I learned. So I learned that in the first 15 seconds of a speeding stop, that the police officer's very interested in what's going on in that car. Now, he's already got some information when he leaves the cruiser to go see the car. What does he know? What does he know when he gets out of his own cruiser? Guess.
Who is in front of him?
He knows, okay, so this is important now. He knows about the car that's in front of him, but he doesn't know who's in the car, right? Because he ran the plates, but if you were tracking that Alabama prison break, and I think they stole 3 cars. By the way, the biggest question in that scenario is why did they take a car they stole to the car wash? I'm still scratching my head over that. So he knows whose car it is, but he doesn't know what's in the car, who's in the car, that kind of thing. So he did interesting things as he would approach the car. By the way, he parked his car on an angle. You ever notice how police cars park on an angle with the butt end of his cruiser blocking the traffic a little bit? Anybody know why they do that?
Safety.
It's safety. He can shield himself from the traffic. Absolutely correct. Another thing he did, as one time he was approaching the car, he lifted the latch on the trunk a little bit, and I asked him about that later. He said, well, it looked like it might have been askew, and I don't want any surprises. My job's dangerous enough. I said, okay. One time he rapped on the trunk. He knocked on it. Why do you think he did that? You watch a lot of TV, don't you? He said to see if somebody's inside the trunk. Well, even if he knocks on the trunk, he can't tell if there's a body in there, but he can tell if the trunk's hollow or full, right? All of this is useful information. When the police officer stands in front of the car, or approaches the driver, he doesn't stand here where it's reasonable to have a conversation. He stands slightly behind the driver and peers in like this. How many of you know this? And how'd you know that? I don't want to know. Now, why does he stand back here? Because statistically, a large percentage of the population is right-handed. If you're going to assault a police officer with your right hand, you've got to bring your arm all the way across the body, whether it's a knife, mace, a gun, right? He's got that much more time. And by the way, there's a post in the car, most cars, that could come into play if he needed some sort of defense mechanism. All of this on the policeman's mind in the first 15 seconds of a traffic stop. Now, I don't know what you do for a living, but odds are the first 15 seconds of your job are not a matter of life or death. But
unless you're district governor.
Unless you're going to be district governor, that's correct. But we belong to an organization, especially in North America, that's on the precipice right now of some problems, especially in light of a pandemic that nobody planned for. So we need members, we need money, M&Ms, right? And so we need to hit all of our marks, as they say in the acting business, and that's why we need to be really good with first impressions. So I want to now talk about some Rotary examples, ways that you can take this information back to the club and put it to good work. Let's talk about first impressions. Like this was a Rotary meeting room, and people are coming in this door, and that's the registration table right there where people would, visitors would say, I'm here to visit. And when people walk in, they have impressions. Now, I know in church and in school, you guys can tell me if I'm right about this, we teach not to judge. Thumbs up if you've heard that. You're not supposed to judge people. Now, this is a fairly new meme. Right? Because only about 10 or 15 years we've been saying, I don't judge, no judgment. We didn't used to say that. You know why? Because judgment's a pretty good idea most of the time. That's why. I don't know about you, but I use judgment almost every day. Good judgment. What we want to try to avoid is prejudgment and bad judgment, right? Different kinds of judgment. So here's what I'm trying to tell you is when people walk through that door, they're judging your club. And you could cross your arms and say, well, they shouldn't judge us, whatever. But they're auditioning you, man. They're checking you out. Because they don't have to join Rotary. They could join the Optimists. They could join Kiwanis. They could join the Chamber of Commerce. They could join nothing. And there are easy ways to convince them in the first 15 seconds. You got a whole hour. You probably have an hour and 15 minutes to do this. But you can do it in the first 15 seconds if you do it right. Here's something we do wrong in Rotary Club meetings. We hit on them right away. Again, interactors, if you're trying to get a date, you do not ask the person to marry you. Not on the first date. So you walk in that door and the greeter says, are you here? What brings you here today? Well, I'm here to visit. Okay, well maybe you'd like to join too. What? You know, where'd that come from? The greeter said, you might think about joining. And the visitor goes to the registration table and they're signing, email and business card and all that stuff. And then the person says, well, if you want to join later, just come see me. It's the second time now somebody's, And then the third time they're on their way to get their iced tea or coffee or something and they get a beverage and, you're visiting. Maybe you'd like to join the club. By this time you think it's an ambush. Everybody's hitting on you to join the club. You see how this could be too much too soon. Now what's a better approach? How about this? I call it every Rotarian, every visitor. So every time a visitor walks in, they would be physically greeted by every Rotarian in the club. So I visited a local club here this week, and I can tell you, you can set your clock to this because it's a pretty typical experience here in North America, is that when you visit a club, a small percentage of the club members will come over to say hi and physically greet you. Hands up if you know this is true. It's true. It's just, and it's not a Rotary thing, it's a human nature thing. Most humans don't just go up and start shaking hands and saying hi. But you could be the outlier. You could be the person that sets the tone for that in your club. And you could be a champion recruiter for Rotary just by walking up to someone and saying, for no good reason at all, my name's Michael Caruso, welcome to Rotary. What brings you here today? All you have to say. I had the pleasure of visiting the Wenatchee Chamber of Commerce, the only Chamber of Commerce I've ever visited that has a wine tasting in the lobby. And I'm going back. But that's a great first impression. I mean, there's a tractor there that's got a tractor that's got a...
Yeah. Welcome to Rotary.
So what happens is you can change the tone and you can change the nutrition of the exchange by simply...
Sorry it took so long.
You're not even sure what you did, are you?
He's a rocket scientist.
You can change the tone just by changing the context of the greeting. I don't want anything from you. I'm just trying to say hi. I'm just trying to be a good person. So it's called the chamber greeting. And you can do it with each other out in the hallway. Hey, what's your name? How are you? Or I do this all the time. And I've done it with many of you at this conference. My name's Michael. I'm visiting from Michigan. That's my line. I don't necessarily want to hit on you about how I'm a keynote speaker and introduce that type of thing to the conversation. I just want you to know I'm a Rotarian, I'm your friend, and why I might be different than everybody else. My name's Michael, I'm from Michigan. Beautiful line, nice and simple, and then I move the conversation over to you if I can. So here's the key. First be interested, and then be interesting. Understand? Why do we have a problem with this very simple formula? I know you know the answer. Shout it out.
We don't take enough time.
It's time. Carl's got it. It's time. Because it takes time to build a relationship. It takes time to listen. It takes time to ask questions in a 3-to-1 or a 5-to-1 ratio. And you got to make the time for it. And it'll come back to you in ways you can't even imagine. It's just a beautiful thing. I do a lot of Q&A here in the program just to keep things interesting, and it's just more fun when we have dialogue. And we'll get going on that in just a second. I also have a goodbye story for you. I also have some freebies for you. So I have some places I want to send you to that will give you ongoing stream of ideas and tips that you can take back to your club to improve your situation back at the club. Is that good? You're going to need your phones because we got some QR codes coming your way. If you've got some apps on your phone, you can open them up and then go get them later, so you don't have to spend a lot of time logging into stuff today. But I'll take you through this here in just a second. A couple people have said so far in the conference, they go like, well, this is the conference great, you get all these great ideas and you go back and improve your club. I just want to tell you something, because I've been to a lot of these conferences. It doesn't matter how many good ideas you get here, when you take them back to your club, they're not gonna wanna do any of this crap. You know that's true. And they're gonna go, yeah, we talked to the people that came back from last year's district conference, same thing. You know, they brought back all these ideas, because you're pushing back against something called stasis, status quo, right? And it's a big problem right now. It's a big problem in every organization. I'm not talking trash about Rotary. So your job is to find a way to and I love Jim's formula. Jim says, first identify the problem. Properly identify the problem. A problem that needs to be solved. When I do sales training, I've got a terrific online course for sales training, and I always tell people, you have to identify the problem. No problem means no sale, right? Like when you try to onboard people into Rotary, and you go, well, do you like kids? No, not really. Do you ever like to give back to the community? It's not important to me. You have any money you want to give away when you die? No. There's no problem, you understand? They have no need to join the organization. There's no need to talk about them at the board of directors meeting every month for the next 18 months. They're not joining. Let's do a couple quick slides and then we do some Q&A. So I started a special Facebook group. I happen to be Rotary Public Image Chair for Zone 28. That's our zone, in case you didn't know that. 36,000 Rotarians in a zone, so with our paired zones with 32, we are 72,000 Rotarians strong. And we've got a pretty good zone Facebook group, but it's a lot of dump and run, what I call a pigeon site. You know what a pigeon does? If a pigeon just drops, you know, makes a deposit and flies away. And that's why when you comment in some of these threads, nobody even responds to you because they're done with you now. You know, there is no dialogue, there is no listening, there is no interest. And so I started this Facebook group because we actually have dialogue and we break down campaigns, marketing campaigns, and we help you understand why that video you have on YouTube only has 5 views. Because you took all the time to make a good video, and now you can't drive traffic to it, and that's going to be a serious problem for your campaign. So we'll help you figure that out. So this is the first offering that I have for you today. It's Get the Word Out Now group on Facebook. I also have a killer YouTube channel, and this will take you to YouTube. You might have to open the app on your phone, but ultimately what you want to do is hit that red subscribe button and the silver notification bell, because I'll give you, if you've enjoyed my presentation today, I'll give you these 2-minute bits, right, in what's called drip, which is a marketing term. Every so often you're going to get a fresh idea. Right? And you can put that idea into place in your club, in your work, in your church, in your condo association, whatever. We good? Just remember YouTube. It's the Angelo Caruso channel. Lots of Rotary videos there too. There's a Rotary channel, by the way. How many of you do speaking of any kind, especially for Rotary? Hands up? Yeah, so speaking is like driving. Everybody thinks they're pretty good at it, but there's a lot of dented cars on the expressway. Everyone can be better at speaking. I can be better at speaking, and I'm always studying the craft, trying to get better. This will drip you comments, suggestions, resources that you can become better at presenting, more effective at what you do. This can save your job if you're in sales. It can help you build a brand. Some of you are thinking about writing a book. This will sell more books for you because you eventually have to go out and promote your own product. We good? Present Like a Pro group on Facebook. And for those of you that are coming into the presidency, how many of you are PEs in the room? Yeah, so you're going to need a leadership tool, and it's good to hear from a Rotarian about this. And so this is a free leadership ebook. Again, a very simple thing. I'll trade you your email for the 30-page ebook, and you'll have some great ideas on how to run your club next year. One of the challenges new presidents have is you've been in the club a long time, and people have been nice to you, but they haven't really listened to you because you haven't been in charge. And on July 1, you need them to start listening to you. And that's an interesting shift in dynamic. This book will help you motivate them, manage your time better, be more influential. There's even speaking tips in the book. And this is my personal contact information. We'll do some Q&A right after this. So that's my
selfie.
That's a selfie. Oh, guess what? I was the only one there. This is that little bridge outside by the park. So I took this while I was out for a walk. and actually posted a video too from there. It's a beautiful area y'all live in. It's fantastic. Yes, it is. I'm coming back. So that's my personal cell phone if I can help you with something. Some of you might ask, well, what possibly could you help me with? You live in Michigan. For example, I do a fundraiser seminar. I've been doing it for some time now, and it's raised over $250,000 for Rotary. And here's how it works, simply put. I waive my speaking fee and donate the money to the club. Understand? So we come to town, and we get 100 local business leaders to come to a Rotary Club sponsored event, and you get M&Ms, money. It's a 10K net if you follow the instructions, and we do it like clockwork. And you also get members, because these 100 people that come to the club, I don't want them to be all Rotarians. That's an interesting thing. People always say, well, we could get other clubs to come, and then we could have 100 Rotarians in the room. That's called inbreeding. I don't want 100 Rotarians. I want 20 Rotarians and 80 people that can join Rotary. You understand? And I'll help you recruit them to the club. So that's what we'll do. Let's do some quick Q&A before we wrap up. Questions about anything. It doesn't have to be my presentation, although that would be best. You might have questions about, because we got all the brain trust here, it's a good time to have a little forum. And some of you may have some good ideas too about these types of things. First impression, marketing, video marketing. What else?
What was your first impression when you got to the Valley?
Oh, it's excellent. So the question was, what was my first impression when I got to the Valley? You're talking about on the drive-in?
Yes.
It's a long drive from SeaTac, so I was looking for a place to stop. And there ain't none. At some point, I left civilization, and then it was like all nature. And then I rounded a corner or something, probably wasn't a corner, but I rounded something, and all of a sudden, the valley was laid out in front of me there. It's beautiful. And then somebody said if you come in at night, it's stunning. And then I drove past a ton of orchards and started to see all the topography and stuff. We don't have any topography in Michigan. We have a city called Mount Pleasant, and it's neither. So it's a beautiful place and beautiful people. I had a chance to sit with the Chamber of Commerce on Thursday to talk about future opportunities, and I visited the downtown Wenatchee Club, and that's when I heard the mayor the first time, and then saw him again today on Saturday. What an impressive man. He is so confident and competent, I think, after 11 years. Other questions? In the back, sir.
So, Michael, I know that you were probably invited as a guest before you joined Rotary.
Yes.
What inspired you to join Rotary?
Well, thank you. What inspired me to join Rotary? I came in through an old program called the GSE program. Anybody?
Yeah.
Group Study Exchange. Did you go on it, Chris, or you're just a fan?
Oh, that's joined the same way.
Yeah, where did they send you?
Excuse me, India.
Yeah. So in 1995, I saw an ad in the paper for an organization called Rotary. Because I didn't know how to pronounce it. Rotary. Sending 5 people on a trip. I think at that time we knew where we were going. Sometimes they keep it a secret. But it was South Africa. This is 1995, so a very interesting place in 1995. And I had to do this little weekend retreat that was in a monastery. That was interesting too. And I found out that they weren't sending the top 5 qualified people to go. This was a life lesson. They weren't sending the top 5 qualifiers. They were sending the best 5 teammates. Big distinction. And I was very lucky to be chosen. I did the trip, and I promised all my friends, everybody, I was going to join this great organization when I got back. Because we learned so much about Rotary in a 6 months preparation. I learned more in 6 months than most Rotarians learn in 6 years. And I said, this is the greatest organization ever. I'm going to join when I get back. And I did. And you know, we had 2 district governors come from that group study team. Me and a guy named Mike Dubin, who's from 6400. So that's how I got in. And then this was important to me. There were other clubs, a bunch of clubs I could join, 3 or 4. I auditioned all of them because I wanted the right fit. I didn't want the one that was necessarily closest or anything. I wanted the one that was the right fit. Because if you get in a club that's the wrong fit, you become disenfranchised and disenchanted. You want to move on, and you'll make the judgment that all clubs are like this one. And that's a fatal mistake, man. I say this all the time. We got video going today even. It's all over YouTube. That some of my best Rotary Club experiences happen outside my club. My club doesn't like it when I say that. But it's true. And that's why I try to get to the district conferences. I try to get to the zone events. That's why I'm going to Houston. Houston, hands up if you're going to Houston. I'll see you there. It'll change you. It'll change you if you see Rotary on that level. You start to really understand what you got here. What else? Please.
So when you're speaking in front of a large group and you're not getting the response that you anticipated, what are some best practices to turn it around?
Okay, so the question is, I'm speaking in front of a large group and I'm not getting the response that I want. What can I do to turn it around? Funny joke first and then a couple techniques. Sometimes I get interviewed by the media and they'll ask me, after a while, there's a lot of predictable questions. And one of the predictable questions is say, wow, Michael, you've spoken, 2,000 presentations and you've spoken on 6 continents and 49 of the 50 states. Have you ever had a bad what do they call it? A bad presentation? And I say, no, but I've had some bad audiences. So here's a technique that you can use. And you can use it with a big group or a small group. I don't know what you call this, maybe medium-sized today. But I call it the stall. And it works best, I'll just show you first and then I'll explain it. So I'll say something like, what kind of questions do you have? And that's always a dangerous spot because nobody wants to ask the first question. So the first technique I want to show you is called the stall. So I'll do it and then you'll see exactly what I'm doing. So what kind of questions do you have? I like to use a plastic bottle with a cap because it takes longer. By the time the bottle comes down and gets capped again, somebody's got a question. So it's just that, it's a couple seconds and somebody gets up the nerve to ask. Another technique I like is I ask the first question. Here's how this technique works. So what kind of questions do you have? Crickets. One question I always get at this point in the program is people find out that I came up through the music business, that my band, the Caruso Brothers, toured the pop circuit, and we opened for acts like Rick Springfield and Corey Hart and Joan Jett, and people always want to know what instrument I played, bass guitar. So I asked the first question and answered it, and I say, what other questions do you have? Well, you haven't asked the first one yet. What other questions do you have? And then they're ready for the next question. Pretty cool thing to do. That's a great technique for a DGN or DGE, sometimes even a DG, to know this technique because, and club presidents, you're going to be asking people for volunteers, and then you get nothing. It makes you look impotent. And remember what they say in law school, never ask a question in court that you don't know the answer to. So if you can say, who wants to volunteer for this, you better have somebody lined up. I used to do that when I was president. I would say, so you're good? You're good? You're going to do this? And he goes, yeah, I'll do it for you. And then we do the thing, and I pretend to be surprised that he volunteered. He said, who wants to do this? Oh, thank you very much, sir. And later he says, why act like that? I told you I was going to do it. But it was for the group, What else? Membership. Money, raising money. There we go. Yes. There you go. Well, tell us this too, your name and club.
Okay, Pamela Burlock. Call me Pam, Leavenworth. And my question is, as we're all kind of rebuilding from the pandemic, at least in our club, kind of like with sales, with membership, do you have any recommendations for how to make the close? Like sometimes we have interest and then too much time goes by, or tips to close a membership sale.
Wonderful, yeah, and you're right on top of it, because it is a science, It's too often, because we're all amateur salespeople in Rotary, nobody's really got this down. The salespeople might be closest to getting it down, but let's talk about it. So here's one thing I would tell you, that there's an average sales cycle in Rotary, like the average person. How long does it take the average person to say yes and install into your club? What do you think the number is in your club? How many days?
30.
They have to visit 3 times. The board has to vote, and then the club has to vote. How many days?
30 days.
Let's say 30. So at 90 days, do you think you're still looking at a good candidate? No. But keep him on the scoreboard because we're desperate, right? Oh, that's all. He's still breathing. He might join still, you know? He's not joining, man. He missed his window. And you got math to prove it. So what that does is a reality check. You got to get more fish. Where's the chief? You know, you got to have more lines off the boat, right? And what happens so often is we've only got one line, and then that's our only fish. We can't lose it. You know, we're going to do whatever we can to keep this guy or make it happen. Then you become forceful, and then you turn him off. You know, it's just a bad deal. So there are techniques for this. I'll give you a quick example. So in every club, there are people that are better at recruiting Rotarians than others. In the sales parlance, we call them closers. And so one thing I would do positively is I identify who the closer is in your club, and every time a visitor comes, I would arrange for the closer to sit next to the visitor so that they can do what they're good at. If they're sitting at another table for the meeting, they don't even have access. So you have to, like, this preordained little plan, you know, you just wink at each other. It'd be like, you know, Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible or something, you know. And then the guy sits down next to him, and now you're golden because he's going to do what he does best. He won't be able to stop himself. Another thing you can do is incentivize. So our club, and by the way, our club is in a drought as well because I don't run things in my club. I just suggest things, and to the extent that they can pull them off, we succeed. We have a thing in our club we've done for some time that if you come to the second meeting, lunch is on us. But that's only a $12 value prop. And if it's Masticholi, it's only a $3 value prop. So it's not enough sometimes to get them to come back to the second meeting because they didn't enjoy the first lunch that much, right? But time is of the essence. If they don't come back in the second or third week, they're not going to cash in on that 8 months from now. Nobody keeps track like that. So it's got to be something that gets them to come back. So what else? Our speaker next week is really good, right? And this is where people say, clubs say, well, we don't need to do speakers anymore. Or let's not have food anymore, and then it'll be cheaper. Or how about this? Let's not meet anymore as a club. I've heard this, you know? And a wise man once said, you cannot shrink your way to success. So think about that as you keep throwing stuff off the boat, because you're going to need some of this stuff, I think, to float later. And before I do this, let's do one more fun thing here. I'll trade you, again, your email address for a chance to win a set of books. And I'll give away a couple sets today. This is what we're going to give away. We'll do this quickly. This is my Work Hacks book. Work Hacks. Could you hold this one? Thank you very much. And this is called a printer spread, right? So every printer spread has ideas for something. I think that's good. Hacks for, let's see, the power of words, how to remember names. When you could use that. Yeah. So this is an 8.5 by 11. You put this on a copy machine. I know a lot of authors are funny about this. I want you to photocopy my stuff. You put it out at placemats at your next board meeting or your next, right? And we're going to give this away in just a second. And this is called a booklet. And this has a bunch of vignettes like, do you believe what people say or what they do? What's the answer? Do. What they do every time. And then there's a little vignette that proves it, like talks about it, right? I'll give away 2 sets. This is worth $30 online. I'm going to give away 2 sets in a minute. Quietly get out your business cards and we'll get them collected. My friend in the yellow shirt, can you collect from the back and kind of sweep this way? And let's see. Sir, in the beard, can you help? Business cards. Yeah, just hold up your cards and sweep them up this way and we'll do a drawing. Meanwhile, we'll answer this question.
When you're addressing a crowd, and you feel like you're losing them or a segment of the crowd, how do you approach that? How do you address those that you're losing, and what signals do you see?
I'll show you 2 tricks for this. Thank you again. We just leave this here. So 2 tricks for, again, keeping engagement. Super, super important. So one trick is to do shout outs to the audience. Like I can do this even if I don't know your name. I can pull you into the thing, right? So watch this. Sorry, gentleman in the orange striped shirt, handing his business card in. Hi, how are you? Hi. It looked like you might have a question just now. Did you have a question? No, I didn't think so. So he knows now that I know he's here, right? He interacted with me, shallow and superficial as that interaction was. But I've got him now. He's not going to go to sleep, are you? No. And I'll tell you something else. Nobody in this area is going to sleep now because you know you could be next. So it's a very easy technique. In comedy, they call it busting down the fourth wall. And similarly, Peter's got the camera, so what I'll do is I'll walk this way. And when I stepped across that threshold just now, I busted the fourth wall, and now I'm embedded with the troops, right? I'm with you. Look at the expressions on your faces, like, what's he going to do next? All I did was walk 20 feet into the audience. It's a very simple technique, and sometimes I'll pat people on the shoulder and say, thank you very much for coming, Kathy. Thanks for all you do. Appreciate you. And once we've done this, you know, it's very captivating, and it's easy to do. The problem is you have so many other things going on. You got to get away from your PowerPoint, get away from all the gymnastics in the front, and stay with the audience. That's what I would suggest.
Thank you.
I know we're running out of time, yes? So we're going to get going. Let's do the drawing quick. Would you help Christine with the drawing?
Of course.
Let's go over here so you can have some room to work. Draw
Get
two
yours,
cards.
yeah.
Draw two cards for me.
Hold on, one more coming.
What does it say, Christine?
Stephanie Bowman.
Where's Stephanie Bowman? Hey, Stephanie, come on down. Stephanie, what club are you in, please?
I'm in the Upper Kittitas County.
Okay, how long have you been in Rotary?
4 years.
Excellent, thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you.
I'll be happy to sign these for you afterward. Thank you. By the way, I have copies of the book. Let's just do, if you want to do a package, I'll do 20 as a Rotary discount instead of 30. I know some of you are thinking you should just give them all away, but that wouldn't be beneficial to all concerned. Who's the second winner? Where's Sue Porter? Hey! Thank you, Christine. You can just leave them there. So, did you enjoy my program today? Thank you. 30 seconds, goodbye story, another airplane story. I'm getting on a plane, the pilot comes on, he makes a very unusual announcement. He says, ladies and gentlemen, would you please all take your seats? We'd like to leave early. I didn't know a plane could leave early, did you? If everyone's on, the plane can leave. I don't know why they don't make this announcement every time. People sat down, buckled up, ready to go. Pilot comes on, he says, yeah, we've got some rough weather coming in. You can see the clouds coming in. If we leave late, you could miss your connection. Thanks for your cooperation. We want you to know it's going to be a very rough takeoff. We're suspending beverage service. We've asked the flight attendants to remain seated on our short flight to Chicago. It's going to be rocky, but we want you to know, even though we can't see, we're flying in a condition called zero visibility. Everybody looks outside to see what that looks like. It's safe. I'll tell you what, man, this is a rocky, herky, jerky takeoff, the worst I've ever experienced. And I just got a coupon from Delta for flying 1,000,000 miles. My graph probably got that a long time ago. And then, by the way, on the way over here, the flight attendant comes over, Mr. Caruso? I said, yeah, that's me. She says, well, we want to thank you for flying 1,000,000 miles on Delta. And I said, oh, well, you're welcome. I don't know what to say. And she says, and then she asked me this question, and I'm pretty good on my feet, but she stumped me. She says, is there anything we can get for you? No. I don't know what. I don't think she meant it, is what I point. So herky jerky takeoff, really rock and roll, flight. And you know what happened is the higher we climbed, the smoother the flight. And we climbed into bright, pristine sunshine, everybody. And you know why this is true? Because the sun is always above the clouds. All you need to decide as a club, as a district, as a zone, as the greatest service organization in the world, do you want to fly your plane in the clouds or above them? Thanks for all you do for Rotary.